Here tonight to the special event and taking time out of your schedule and your Saturday to come in for a very important topic. Now, there's a book that's fairly popular called The Anxious Generation. How many have heard of that book before? The Anxious Generation. I've had so many pastors tell me, you've got to read this book because it's lined up with the whole topic that Nathan Sutherland's going to talk to us about tonight, which is safe and responsible use of technology. He comes from a godly perspective, and he and his family live in the Puyallup area. Actually made a connection through the Benedict family. And so once again, Jacob is doing a good job to bring an outside venue in, and that's just a great blessing. And so I want us to just enjoy it to the fullest. He's going to give you all the information that you need. I don't want to spill any beans here. Just about the agenda and the format tonight. At the very end of everything, we're going to have some cookies. That's what's under the mysterious black tablecloth over there. So you can build up an appetite for cookies and a little bit of beverage, some coffee or tea. But I just want to open with a word of prayer and then welcome Nathan Sutherland. Heavenly Father, we thank you for our time together. We thank you for the special event. We thank you for the ministry that Nate Sutherland is bringing in and for his family. Father God, we just pray for open hearts that in this format, Father God, in this event tonight, that you would speak to us, Lord. Give us great wisdom in an age that's ever-changing, rapidly changing in so many ways. Give us great wisdom in how to manage technology ourselves and how to lead others in that as well. We love and praise you tonight in Jesus' name. Please join me in welcoming Nathan Sutherland.
Oh, man. I'm excited. No, you're good. I'm going to mute that and drop it in there without breaking anybody. Hi, everybody. Oh, man. I'm excited to be here. I see that you have handouts. That's going to be important. 2 reasons. 1, you get to jot your notes. It'll help you focus. 2, I'm going to say all the words. That will help you keep track of them. So you now have the general overview of where we're headed. Second order of business before we go any further is I need you to find an elbow partner. That's someone you can bump with an elbow gently. Gently. You can have up to 2 elbow partners. You have up to 2 elbows. All right. Here's why that matters. Because periodically, actually at every major break on that presentation, there's going to be a chance to turn to an elbow partner and do something we call a pair share. So I'm going to give you 2 questions. You're going to get 3 minutes, and you're actually going to actively process all the words that I have just said. That's to allow you to kind of hone some of the questions, figure out what makes sense from what Nathan just said, and what do I actually like. I don't disagree, but I also don't know what to do with. That's where your questions come from, because at the end we have a Q&A that we can actually start to apply some of these or tease them out a little bit with further examples. So the pair share time will be when we do that. Third and finally, to get us rolling, is there's a book table on the back. The idea being, I wrote 1 book. It's tonight's talk and 1 other talk, basically jammed into 100 pages. Supposed to be very accessible. You can read it just the chapters you want. You don't have to read it cover to cover. Then there's my wife's book. It's a devotional. It is intended for moms, but it works for dads and anyone else. The goal being, how do we encourage you point your eyes towards Jesus while trying to raise kids in a tech world? If you want to buy one, you can use your phone, QR code, and it'll send you to just check out, which is great. If for some reason you're like, you know what, the book is $20, if you don't have $20, or you're like, I don't think it's worth $20, you are welcome to take one. It is content worth stealing. So go ahead and do it. We're a nonprofit. The goal is to get these resources out. We can't give them all away because we wouldn't have the money to buy the next set. But the goal is to get you the book if you need it and want it. Please have one. Those are those resources in the back. And if you don't want to use your phone, we can take checks and cash. You just actually have to come find me to do that. So that is so that you can just on our system, check them out. You'll see the papers in front and roll with it. And I have actually had people take one of the papers. This is why there's multiple copies. Take a paper, take a book, and just pay later. Because whatever, you got to run, you don't have your card, whatever it might be. And that's fine. I literally have had transactions come through at 2 a.m. So maybe you're just a night owl book purchaser. That's the way that system works. It has been great. We've done that. This is, I think, our 7th or 8th time doing that. And it's surprisingly functional. So that's why those books are back there with those pieces of paper. All right, a little bit about myself. So my name, Nathan Sutherland. I run a ministry called Gospel Tech with a focus on how do we love God and use tech. And a little bit about me. The first is I was a middle school teacher for a decade. I taught in the Puyallup School District, 8th grade language arts. Yeah, right? Everyone's favorite class. Actually, 1 year, 2008, I got to teach social studies, which is my degree. I was double major, history, political science, and was very passionate about teaching social studies, laid off with that whole RIF situation when the housing market imploded in 2008, and got hired back the day before school started teaching language arts, because they're like, well, can you teach language arts? I'm like, yes, I can teach all sorts of things. And so I did. I taught 4 preps. Teacher people know that means you're planning 4 entire different classes. So it wasn't like 8th grade language arts and 8th grade honors. It was like 8th grade language arts and 7th grade, and 2 classes we've never had before, and you get to make them up. So I did that. I loved teaching. I learned to become very passionate about seeing kids reach their full potential. And then realized that teaching was part of my passion, not the end passion. We'll get into more of that as the conversation continues. But I am passionate about seeing kids reach their full potential. I am one of 5 kids. I'm the middle of 5. So I have 4 sisters. Yeah, 2 older, 2 younger. If you want a really unique adult, take that adult raised by 5 moms and then put him in 8th grade for a decade. Right? Like, think about this. I show up day 1. I'm also the new guy, right? Everyone walks in the room, but it's 8th grade language arts. And if there's any language arts teachers in here, this is not offensive. This is true. You're already everyone's least favorite teacher. Because math teachers, there's kids that love math. They're like, I'm a math person. That's my oldest kid. There's social studies kids, and they're like, I love history. I'm all about history. You're my favorite person. I don't even know your name yet. Language arts, everyone's like, I already can read English. I don't need this class. 100% of kids show up. They're either like, I don't like reading, or I don't know how to do this. So then I have to spend the entire first month just getting them to like me so that they'll actually listen long enough to be like, it's not actually about how to read. It's how to understand what you're reading, how other people understand you, right? Like that's the entire premise is understanding others, helping them understand you. That's language arts. But they don't get it the first month. So then they finally, by like Christmas, start to get it. Then by June, we all have like this cool bond and we're getting along. And then they go on to 9th grade and I restart 8th grade with a bunch of kids that don't like me by default. So that was my life for a decade. And then, the third thing you need to know about me is I'm the parent to 3. I have Owen in the middle, Henry on the right, Hadley on the left. They are 11, 9, and 5, and they are my motivation to do good work in connecting the hope of the gospel, the good news that we're sinners saved by grace, and that should mean something when it comes to using our technology. It should change what we use, but also how we use it. If I'm a new creation, that should show up in the games I play, and the words I say, and the stuff I search, and how I repent well from a poor use of technology. But I'm doing this in real time. I made a joke earlier that I'm here because I'm doing it perfectly, so just be more like me. That's not actually at all the case. I am shown that, I know, right? Super disappointing. Turns out it's not follow Nathan or Jesus. It's like, they're both pretty good, so just pick a side. We all need Jesus. My humans remind me of that regularly. And you do need to know just a little bit about each of them. So Owen is your classic firstborn. Any firstborn in the room? Any firstborn? Yeah, all right. So this isn't true for all of you, but just know, firstborns have a tendency to be pretty driven, pretty organized, pretty goal-oriented. Not all of you, but this is a stereotype because it pans out. Owen is the archetype. Like if you look up in an encyclopedia, firstborn, that kid's picture will be there. Owen loves himself some goals. He loves rules and structure. He loves rules and structure for other people. He just likes to make sure that all the stuff is being done in its proper order. Since he was 2 or 3, he would organize all the Tupperware by size and shape. And it has just continued for perpetuity. And it's beautiful. It's wonderful. And it works great in math. And like, it's great to watch him just thrive in organized environments, but he doesn't do great with transitions. He doesn't love surprises. He loves to hear an idea and then just like mull on it. If he walks into a room, he will find a wall and then just stare. Because he wants to make sure he knows what everything is doing. Then there's Henry. You could not have a more different human being. Henry's the most present person you've ever met. He can't be anxious because tomorrow doesn't exist. Henry is in this moment. This is the only moment that exists. You can't change the past. The future hasn't happened. Henry walked into my house with one shoe on. Said, Henry, where's your other shoe? He looked at his feet. He looked at me. And he goes, I don't know. Not like I'm looking for it, but just like, I don't know, Dad. Like, again, you can't change the past. I don't know if I'm going to find it. The future hasn't happened. I'm a kid with one shoe. Love me as I am. And that's beautiful. It's a very middle kid thing. Very present. Henry loves reading to recharge. He's an extrovert, but it takes him a lot of energy, so he needs his introvert. We were playing with neighbors in the front yard. All of a sudden, Henry just wasn't there, and I looked through the front window, and he's just in a chair with a book, just reading. Voracious reader. You got any of these in your life? This is my wife, right? She just reads and reads and reads. That's Henry. And it's amazing, and it's beautiful, and God has gifted him with the ability to be so, so present. Henry's so present when I tried to discipline him when he was 3 and 4, I'd get down on one knee and be like, Henry, come here. He'd walk up to me, and then he'd just keep walking until his nose was touching my nose. And then he would just put his hands on either side of my face and just stare into my eyes until his eyes looked like a cyclops, right? If someone gets that close to you, they merge. And I had this little freckled Norwegian cyclops staring at me deeply and intently into my eyes because he'd already forgotten that he broke all the rules. And he's like, yes, Daddy, I'm right here. And this, right? Like, you can't penalize Henry because he doesn't learn from pain because that's in the past. You think I'm kidding. Owen hit his head. You know, little kids, 4-year-olds, they go under tables, and they'll grab like a Matchbox car, and then they'll stand up and whack their head on the counter at the table. Owen did that exactly 1 time in his life. Henry did it 3 times in 15 minutes, and I was like, oh, no. He's lost 11 teeth. 9 of them are chipped because Henry doesn't learn from pain, including starting fights with his older brother that he can't finish. He just forgets every time that he's about to get absolutely dropped. Then there's Hadley. She's 5. Hadley is a human disco ball of a human being. Hadley starts the party when she walks into the room. Doesn't matter if you were having a party already. This is now her party. She will run this party, and she will end it if she has to. Hadley is a lot in all of the best ways. But basically her entire life is jazz hands and glitter. That is... she exudes energy. And if she's having a bad day, unlike Henry, who needs to read, Hadley needs more people. I was putting her to bed, did our little nighttime routine. Good night, honey. Love you. Leaving out. Daddy. Yeah, hon. Who I see tomorrow. And I went through a whole list of people. She's in kindergarten. You're going to see all these people. Good night, honey. Went to go leave again. Daddy. Yeah, honey. And who else? Because Hadley's one of those people that is just energized by people. I tell you that about my humans because I know that every person you represent, your children, your grandchildren, your neighbor kids, the kids in your classroom, the kids in your Sunday school are wired by God uniquely. They show beautiful character of God. They show the beautiful gifts of God, but they are different. They can use the same tech for the exact same amount of time. They will use it differently. They will struggle with it differently because they're just wired. And it's amazing. We need all 3 of those personalities. But we also need to recognize they're going to engage this world using their technology in some amazing ways. Owen is going to use that to create efficiency. But he also is going to probably struggle with wanting control. Technology promises you a lot of control. Henry is going to be amazing. A lot of technology is just going to be water off his back because he doesn't have a lot of those ambitious goals of going out and conquering and winning. But he can get distracted because he doesn't have a goal. And tech gives you really easy, accessible, low-hanging fruit that makes you feel successful, that makes you feel connected, that makes you feel productive even though you're not. It's just given to you. And you didn't actually learn anything or risk anything, but you feel like you accomplished something. Henry could struggle with that given his personality. And Hadley is a beautiful picture of God going to people and recognize their value. And yet, we know that there's entire platforms built around convincing you that your value is found in what other people think about you and how many of them think that. And that is a slippery slope for a true extrovert who just wants people to know that they're loved. And you can get distracted by the shiny and the bright and even your success in doing good things. So we recognize that every one of our kids has these amazing gifts, and we want to see them amplified by the technology they use, not distracted from it. And that is our goal. My goal for you tonight And the reason I still do this conversation live, there's a book on it. I could just send you the book. The reason this conversation is live is I have found repeatedly over the last, 5 years of doing this, but really the last 3, that this conversation in the next 70 minutes, I'm going to be able to give you words to say to talk about healthy tech. Clarity to communicate the gospel, and the opportunity and the ability to connect the hope of the gospel to your daily tech life to the point where you will be in the driver's seat of these tech conversations. You will be able to go confidently to your young person, communicate your love for them and your hope for them in Christ. Not just, I don't like that tech and I'm scared of other things. It is going to be able to really leverage your ability to fight for your child, not just with them when it comes to tech. So the 3 things we're doing tonight when talking about safe tech is we're going to talk about the 2 types of tech. Then we're going to talk about how do we know if it's healthy or not. So once we know what it is, do we even have a problem or are we doing great? And either way, whether there's a problem that we need to address or we're crushing it and we just want to keep it healthy, how do we do that? Those are our 3 goals for tonight. And if I miss any of that, you're welcome to ask me in the Q&A. But it's all on that handout. That'll walk us through it. But let's get started. There's 2 kinds of tech. There's tech we call tool tech and tech that we call drool tech. This is important. Key understanding number 1, this is not good and bad tech, but they are designed differently. Tool tech wants to help you create. If you have a goal that you want to accomplish, tool tech will help you accomplish that goal. You want to write something. You want to design something visually appealing. If you want to create a game, a movie, a song, tool tech will help you do that. It comes in, helps you accomplish the goal, and does not do anything other than what you told it to do. Compare that to drool tech. Drool tech is designed to help you consume. It will help you accomplish a task, but it comes with some extra little hooks involved because drool tech is designed to take your time, your focus, and your money. So you want to connect with friends, that's great. You can do that over here, and we're going to want to keep you a little longer than you meant to stay. Oh, you want to go have fun with friends. That's great. You can go play this over here. And we're going to cost you a little more than you wanted to pay. That is the goal behind drool tech. It's very effective. All the trillion-dollar companies do it. And we just want to recognize that it is there. That's the whole point of this first part. But before we go any further, I'm a middle school teacher. And what's middle school without pop quizzes? So, with knowing nothing other than tool and drool that I just told you, I'm going to put a technology on the board. You're going to turn to your elbow partner, and in 10 seconds, tell them if it's tool or drool, and explain. Ready? Tech number 1. Nail gun. 10 seconds. Go. Three, 2, 1. If you think it's tool tech, raise your hand. If you think it's drool tech, raise your hand. If you think it's a trap, raise your hand. Yeah, all right. I know the cynics in the room now. Okay, it's not meant to be a trap. It is meant to be very clear. Nail gun, literal tool. I'm trying to just drive that home for us. It's a fancy hammer, which is just a fancy rock tied to a stick. If you want put a piece of metal through a piece of wood, you're going to use a nail gun. Currently, there is no nail gun that's like you've used 500 nails. But for the simple price of $4.95, you can get another 150, right? Like it doesn't do that. There's no gamification. There's no encouragement to use 500 extra nails so you can get gold star nail gun status. It's just a nail gun. It does what you tell it. It stops when you stop. Tool tech. Let's try another. Podcast. 10 seconds. Turn to your neighbor. Go. Three, 2, 1. Think it's tool tech. Let me see your hands. Think it's drool tech. Let me see your hands. All right, hands down. And I heard it and I get it. Both. This is tricky, right? Because you're like, well, I use it for education. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about how is it designed. Not how you use it or what your intention with it is. We're talking about what is it designed to do, and it is tricky because almost every podcast platform that you consume podcasts on is drool tech. Spotify, Amazon, Apple. You know it's drool tech because you show up and you listen to the same podcast every single time, and it gives you multiple rows of suggestions before you get back to your regular listens. If there's a feed involved, it's Drool Tech, because it doesn't want you just to repeat the behavior you've been repeating. It wants to expand that behavior. Time, focus, money. Yeah. Go ahead and listen to those three. But what about this one? What about that one? What about this topic? And it's just trying to poke around and figure out what else would you like that you might stay a little bit longer or come back a little more often to engage with. Yet, the process of creating a podcast, entirely tool tech. When I sit down in front of a camera with a microphone, nobody's setting me goals. My recording app isn't like, but for 22 minutes, you get an extra 1,000 recording points. Doesn't care. All it does is it just records, I hit done, I upload, and Krista Ministries does amazing magic and makes me sound incredible. Thanks, Krista Ministries. But that's all tool tech. My Google Drive, tool tech, all those things. And yet, on the consumption, or on the production side, we put it out to, say, Apple, and now there's other suggestions, that platform. If you go gospeltech.net/podcast, it's just sequential order. It's a website. It doesn't care. There's no ads on there. It doesn't try to link you through to other products. It just is the date it was released all the way down and just pages and pages. And I think it goes back to like 2020. Actually, I know. February 2020, I remember sitting at my dining table with my wife. You can hear the refrigerator running in the background. We're talking into opposite sides of the same microphone because we went to record and I realized you can't do 2 USB microphones on the same computer. Yeah, there you go. In case you want to know. Yeti mics, don't buy 2 of them. It won't work. And we're literally like, I was like, we're married and this is uncomfortable. Then we're like talking into the book. Just imagine another face like right here, right? That was happening for the entire first episode. And we're like, this is so great. And then 2 months later, the world shuts down. It was a rough time to start a nonprofit on speaking. Podcasts can be both, but on the consumption side, the platforms are primarily Drool Tech. How about this one? Your news feed. Turn to your neighbor. Go. You guys were quick on that one. All right, let's hear it. Tool Tech. Let me see your hands. Drool Tech. Oh, look at us. We're growing so fast. If it has the word feed in it, there's a good chance it's Drool Tech. The idea behind a feed is an algorithm or an AI is picking information based on data about you. So it's not actually just what you asked to see or even what you want to see. They're really trying to find 2 things. They want to find what you're going to love and what you're going to hate. This isn't conspiracy. This is well documented. It's a very good business practice. I actually was told this when we published our books. They said, what you don't want is 3-star reviews. I was like, why? And they're like, because they do nothing. But let's say on Amazon, you read my book. You hate it. You 1-star review? That's phenomenal. Please 1-star review if you hate it. Because what the algorithm does is it goes and finds everyone else with a profile like that individual and sends them, when they search for a book, my book as a suggestion. Because a bunch of 1-star people will buy the book just to hate it. You've done this. You've watched newscasts you knew you were going to hate. You searched websites you knew had information you disagreed with because you love to hate it. That's going to drive you to the internet to be like, look how wrong all these people are. That drives engagement. That drives revenue. That is a business model, or a 5 out of 5. Obviously, we know what we're getting into. Most of us engage news we already know we're going to like. We agree with their takes. We actually kind of want to know what to think, so we go ask them. And if you and your spouse go and check the same news, there's a good chance you don't get it in the same order, or even the same stories, because they have lots of data on you. They build a little profile. It's very cool in the way that like fighter jets are cool. We don't always like the way they're used, but we just can't look away. They build data profiles now to the point where not only do they know your shopping history and your search history and the conversation. Yes, the conversations you have are a real thing. They care about those. That's why Siri is a thing and your Echo Dots are listening. It's very valuable to them. But my favorite one is they actually know who you're in proximity to. So they know the profiles that you're in the room with, and they can adjust your information and ads based on that. Which, think about the amount of data we're crunching to make that happen. Super cool. Terrifying, but cool. That's a news feed. Keep that in mind. They are not trying to make you a well-rounded American. They're trying to make you really angry and really happy because that's good for business. I blame us, but it is the practice happening right now. Finally, your computer. Tool or Drool, go. 3, 2, 1. Tool tech. Drool tech. Yeah, right? That's tricky. It is both. Which is the trouble when you try to tell your child to do their schoolwork on the same device that they use for their favorite hobby and escape drool tech. It's difficult. Let me give you an example. Puyallup School District went 1-to-1 while I was teaching there, so every kid got a laptop. Cool idea. No longer going to do textbooks. All they're reading is online. Now, I ran a real bummer of a unit in January, and this was intentional. So I was trying to teach my students tone and mood. The concept is, how does the author sound? How does it make you feel? Tone, mood. It's a very difficult concept for middle school students because you're like, how did that make you feel? And they're like, I don't know, bored, hungry. Like, I don't know what you mean. Like, all right. So up through Christmas, we would do like real warm, fluffy, like the gift of the Magi. All that matters is love. Just give good gifts. Like all that stuff. Then January 5th, they show up in the dark like this. And they go home in the dark. And so I start a tone mood unit. And it starts with To Build a Fire by Jack London. You ever read that story? Yeah. A guy trying to build a fire in the Yukon, slowly freezing to death. Then we went straight to the little matchstick girl. You ever read that? Yeah, there you have. Yeah, about a little girl freezing to death in downtown London. Then we went to Telltale Heart. Guy murders his roommate, puts him under the floorboards. Right, and monkey's paw, and just like bummer after bummer after bummer, until eventually some kid in every class inevitably be like, why? These are so sad. And I'm like, yeah. Tell me about that. Like everyone's just dying and it's always dark. I'm like, uh-huh. Go on. Because at some point, those kids will inevitably explain the author's tone and how it's affecting their mood. And it's a gold star out of the park home run every single time where the kid's like, oh, I get it. Right? For something you could never, ever, ever explain to an 8th grader. They will just get it because we live in nirvana personified in the Northwest and nowhere better to understand tone and mood than just bumming them out. Now imagine, those same kids are supposed to go on their computer, click on the share drive, click on To Build a Fire, and read a PDF. In the middle of that process, they get a drop-down banner. It says, did you know this computer has Minecraft? Not only is it a notification banner, it's clickable. Click that banner in the middle of your screen instead of To Build a Fire, and Minecraft just loads on your school device. How many of my 8th graders do you think resisted clicking Minecraft when prompted? Exactly 0. Yeah, it was a huge thing. The same computer that gave them that reading and knowledge and understanding that, wow, the words and the context that I give the stories I tell can affect the mood of people 100 years later. That's a powerful lesson to learn. Or Steve and Minecraft. Exact same device, half-inch away, worlds apart. That's what we're trying to communicate here when we talk about tool and drool tech, is they are designed differently. And that's really, really important for us to understand. Best example I could give you for tool tech would probably be Microsoft Word. Think about this. None of you has ever, at 11 p.m. when going to bed, set your $1,000 alarm clock on your bedstand. It buzzes. There's a notification. You click on it. It says, hey, you awake, haven't seen you in a while. It's Microsoft Word. It says, maybe we could write a haiku. Microsoft Word doesn't do that. It doesn't bother you. It doesn't care. You could use it once a day, once a week, once a year. It will never follow up on you. It sets you no goals. It gives you no motivation. Never has anyone, when using Word, had it say, did you know that girl down the street already started her book? Did you know it's way better than yours? Here's an excerpt just to make sure you feel terrible about yourself. Word doesn't care. It's just going to sit there and wait for you to use it. But our most common forms of drool tech, social media, shows and movies, music and video games. I'll explain. Music is because almost all the music we listen to is through an algorithmic feed, right? You go and say, I want to listen to this band, and it's like, yeah, but what about? Anytime the program questions your decisions, it's drool tech, right? It's trying to nudge you in a new direction. That's why music is up there. If you listen to records by one band in sequential order and you have to flip them, okay. If you play them yourself on the piano, all right. It's not what we're talking about. These all are trying to get you to consume. It doesn't mean they're bad. It means if you're going to have a fight about technology, you're going to have a fight about one of these. Very few people have come to me and said, last night we were getting ready for dinner and we told our son 5 more minutes and he shouted about 10. My email is so good. I just need to finish this last email, Mom, and then I'll be there. I need 10 minutes. Most of the time it's because they're playing Fortnite and they can't pause an online game and they're yelling at you that they can't quit right now because they're going to get a demerit for leaving their squad partway through a game. That's generally what you're going to fight about with technology. Behavioral tricks that are intended to keep you a little longer than you meant to stay. Okay? The question is how. This is the short little psychology version, so you know this isn't tinfoil hat talk. Here's how it works. Basically, a dude wanted to train a rat to press a lever. He gave it treats until it got full, so he electrified the floor. Rat freaked out, pressed the lever on accident, and was like, you know what I should do? Press the lever. Okay? That's 1938. B.F. Skinner. We call it operant conditioning. Say it with me. Now, operant conditioning. Yeah, you're going to want to remember that. Watch this little gem. A few years later, the Hebbian theory of learning is formed. The concept is neurons that fire together, wire together. Or as your PE teacher told you, practice makes permanent. That's an important concept because it breaks what we knew about psychology and the human brain. We thought the human brain was a computer. And if you just were born with a brain that did something, you just did that something. And now we know that your brain actually responds to your choices. I want to state that again. Your brain responds to your choices. The things you do repeatedly, you get good at. The question isn't, will this affect my brain? The question is the effect of this choice something I want to make more permanent? It comes down to a concept we call neuroplasticity. Norman Doidge wrote a whole book on it. Chapter 1 is about a lady that proves practice makes permanent. She had a surgery. The medication scorched both inner ears, the organ that God gave you to tell you you're standing up straight. No longer had it. She had crippling vertigo. Couldn't drive, couldn't work, couldn't live on her own. When she lays on the ground, feels like she's falling through the floor. 3 years go by. There's no fix. She doesn't have an inner ear to repair. Doctor comes and says, we have an experimental procedure. Can we do it? She says, yes. They put a retainer in her mouth. It's got little electrodes that stipple her tongue. So if she leans forward, it gives little electric shocks to the front of her tongue. She leans back, shocks the back, left, right. After an hour, she gets 5 minutes of independent standing before the vertigo comes back and she drops. After 2 years, she's completely independent, doesn't need the retainer anymore, and is living back on her own. She does not have an inner ear. They trained her brain day after day after day after day after day to use her tongue to tell her when she's standing up straight. And her brain eventually was like, yeah, I got this. I got it. I can figure it out. I can not constantly be spinning because the tongue is telling me where we are in space. That's not supposed to happen. She doesn't have the organ that's designed to tell her where she is in space, and yet she was able to train not just a new behavior, but an actual new neural pathway from a repeat stimuli. Operant conditioning. That's important because Nero Y'all wrote a book called Hooked. Read the subtitle on that baby. How to build habit-forming products. Not a cautionary tale, by the way. It's a how-to manual. Looks like this. You need a trigger. Someone gets bored or you send in a notification. I just want to say right now, notifications are the most insulting thing a tech company can do to you. Notifications are a tech company's way of calling you stupid. Think about this. You're living your life, doing what you wanted to do, and a tech company goes, whoa, 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 whoa. What are you doing? Time with your kids? Come on now. What you need to do is reach out to that kid you were in high school with 20 years ago and tell him happy birthday, dummy. Go do it now. Notifications are very disrespectful and you should be offended. And turn them off. Turn them off. All of them. I'll tell you how. Ask me in the Q&A. I can actually make it so that none of them show up, but people can still call you and your phone will ring. It's possible. You can do it. If my phone rings, it's my dad, my wife, or my father-in-law. Those are the only 3 things that'll make that phone make any noise. And I will literally stop this talk and pick it up because somebody died. Right? Like, that's it. That's the only reason I'm getting a phone call. Or the one time my wife just forgot I was doing a talk. There was that. That was traumatic, but nobody got hurt. You need a trigger, which leads you to an action. You're going to check it, you're going to read it, you're going to post it, you're going to play it. That gives you a variable reward. Variable rewards are what the rat was getting. It doesn't know how much treat or how much electricity it's going to get, but something's going to happen. Think of Duolingo for this. Anyone here use Duolingo language app? Yes. All right. So it's great. You have a goal. I want to learn a language. Very cool. Duolingo's like, we'll teach you a language. You're like, great, I'm going to study for 15 minutes. Duolingo's like, fabulous. You go to finish, and Duolingo's like, you know you're only 200 points away from Emerald League, right? You should give me 5 more minutes, and I can get you to Emerald League. And you're like, oh, I do want Emerald League. Or they'll switch it on. You're like, you've worked pretty hard this month, but did you know you're about to get demoted? Because you didn't work quite hard enough. You're going to go down a league in just 2 days. You should give me 5 more minutes right now so you get enough points to not get demoted. And you're like, that's true, and I should probably check tomorrow to make sure no one passed me. That's behavioral training because that's a variable reward. There is no bad reward. A mean comment on your feed, reward. You exist. You are now more invested, which means the next time you get the notification, either the physical banner or boredom, you're more likely to repeat the behavior. You're going to go check Duolingo to make sure you don't lose that extra hard work you just put in to not get demoted this month. And it's delightful, and we feel so good about it. It works. It's lovely. It doesn't mean it's bad. It does mean that it's happening to you. You're not the one driving that, and you want to be aware. If you want some examples, that you don't need to watch the social dilemma anymore. It's actually kind of a bummer, and it's not super helpful in its bummeriness. It's just like, the world is destroyed, and we wish we hadn't done it. So, like, don't do that. The Anxious Generation, way better resource. Jonathan Haidt's book. So read that book, skip this, but here's the cliff notes. Notifications, it's drool tech. Likes, it's drool tech. I don't know if this makes sense to you. For a long time, I heard likes, and I just like nodded along. And then I actually stopped about it one day. Stopped and thought about it. I was like, but why? Like, why are likes such a weird, like we always talk about 2010, we invented the like button, and it ruined the universe. Here's why. With the invention of the like button, we created a process to datafy, not a real word, by the way, don't use that in public, everything. Like things that were previously unquantifiable by humanity, like pictures of dinner. I take a picture of dinner, you take a picture of dinner, we both post them to social media. You get 50 likes, I get 5. You are literally 10 times better than me at dinner pictures. It's measurable. They can send it to other people that want good dinner pictures, and they can bury the bad dinner pictures. Like buttons change the way society worked. Up until that point, the only way to be an influencer was to actually have influence. You have a topic, you have a goal, people follow you for that goal. Now you can just have influence and pick the subject you want to be influential in. You have influence because you have likes, not because you have anything you particularly stand for. That has never happened before in human history. 2010 changed all that. Swipe to refresh based on a slot machine. You pull down, it gives you new information. That's your variable reward. Infinite scroll. Again, never in human history has something other than God been infinite. You've always had to turn a page. The play's always ended. Even Wagner's Ring Cycle. Everything has come. Countries come to ends. But not your TikTok feed. It just goes on forever, without any natural break to say, maybe you should go to sleep. Feeds, giving you information you didn't ask for. Points and rewards, motivating you to make choices that you didn't make on your own. And the general fear of missing out, which is driving all of your young people to ask you for social media, which is why they actually want their smartphone. That is drool tech in a nutshell. If I were to give you one quintessential example of drool tech, it's YouTube. YouTube has 2.5 billion monthly users. If they could get 1 in 10 to stay an extra 60 seconds, so in a month, they don't need 9 out of 10. They can let those people just walk right out the door. They go, I need to know how to do this math problem. Great. 9 out of 10 can leave. I need 1 out of 10 within that month to stay for 1 extra minute. I will gain 173,000 days worth of viewing. With 2.5 billion people, I just need 1 in 10 to stay 1 minute. That's my reward. To put that in context, that's enough time to watch all 10 seasons of Friends 47,000 times. To put that in context, that takes you 192 years. That's if I get 1 out of 10 to stay 1 minute. Just so you know, the last time YouTube told us their number on retention for viewers was 2016. We freaked out because they told us 7 out of 10 viewers stay for an additional video. 7 out of 10 viewers wanted to figure out how to do that math problem and stayed to figure out how that squirrel got through that maze. That is powerful when it comes to training. Doesn't make YouTube bad. I have content on YouTube. I love it. And I frequently get just absorbed in some video I never asked to watch. You want to know my most recent one? Title: The World's Best Cyclists Don't Race Bikes. Now, I'm a cyclist because I used to be a wrestler, and I'd break a hip if I tried to do that now. So I ride bikes because I need a proper amount of suffering to go with my life. And I literally looked at my clock and was like, yeah, I've got 15 minutes. I'll save you the 15 minutes. Do you know what they race? Yachts in the America's Cup. Who knew? They take 8 freaks. Go to your local YMCA and try to do this. They can hold 500 watts for an hour. They take 8 of them. They put them in an unair-conditioned boat laying down, and they run the electronic systems on a completely enclosed capsule because the entire boat is run by computer, and you can't run external combustion. You have to power those boats by yourself. So it runs the sails, it runs the hydrofoils, it runs the direction by 8 dudes suffering for an hour with no breeze in an all-black boat. And I was like, that was worth my 15 minutes. Thank you, YouTube. The only problem, I didn't actually choose to do that. I didn't even know that was an option to choose. And I just took 3 minutes of your life telling you about it because it was that good. YouTube is that effective. I'm not telling you. You will come away feeling it was a waste of my time. You will willingly give it up. In fact, this is actually what we care about. Why does it matter that there's 2 kinds of tech? Why spend this much time? We get it. Tool and rule. You had it 8 minutes in. Here's why it matters. We can be convinced we need things we did not want. We can be convinced we need things we did not want. Do you know what that's? Well, actually, I'll spare that question for a moment. You guys know what that logo stands for? Yeah. You have any friends that use Snapchat? Snapchat, it's a direct messaging app. It's similar, it's right up there in terms of fighter jets and how I feel about it. It's genius because this is a feature exactly 0 people asked for. Nobody was using Instagram and was like, you know what I wish? I love being able to direct message my friends, but I wish there was a timer that like when I direct message a friend and then they message me back, that it just started a 24-hour clock. And if we don't message each other within those 24 hours, our streak dies and so does our friendship. Could you make that? And Snapchat's like, aha, I've done it for you. Not only that, not only will I track the number of days you consecutively message each other within 24 hours, I will create another feature called Read. And if your friend reads your snap and doesn't snap you back, it'll show a little red icon so you know that they hate you. If you ask anyone who uses streaks, have you ever kept a streak alive when you should have been eating, studying, sleeping, or hanging out with people? 100% of kids across the nation that I have spoken to will say, yes, I have done that. Kept a streak alive when I should have been doing those things. Those 4 things, however, are Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You have to have food and sleep to survive. You have to have social connection. And you have to have a reason for today and a purpose for tomorrow. So that would be your sleep, your food, your friends, and your future. Viktor Frankl wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning. He lived through 3 concentration camps. He said there were 3 reasons people died in concentration camps. He said you could die from exposure, the elements. You could die from brutality. Or you could die from giving up, not understanding a purpose for tomorrow. He said you could spot these people because they would start smoking their cigarettes. He said in the concentration camps, cigarettes were money. And the only reason you would smoke one is if you wouldn't need it. You don't need money if you're not going to be around to spend it. He said, someone starts smoking their money, they're dead in 48 hours. because they quit. We have young people who will tell us they're giving up what they need to get to a feature they never wanted. Do you know what that's the definition of? That's like, look it up in a textbook. What is it called when you give up what you need to get to what you want? It's called addiction. The textbook definition of an addiction is when you are giving up what you need. You're giving up the relationships, you're giving up the sleep, you're giving up the health, you're giving up the opportunities that you need for survival to get to something that you want or have been convinced you want. If we have a device that is convincing our children they need things that are actually hurting them, we have a concern, and that's going to be drool tech. It's not just kids. How many times a day does an adult check his or her phone? Turn to your elbow partner. Tell them a number. Go. Did you say that number? That's once every 3 waking minutes. That's not a choice, by the way. That's a compulsion. If you don't believe me, do this. Go into your phone, take your folder that you check the most, move it to a different page. Go in your phone, take the folder you check all the time, your news folder, your work folder, your email, whatever, move it to a different spot on your phone. Tomorrow, when you go to open that compulsively, you will open a different app and actually ask yourself, why am I here right now? Like, what was I just doing? Because all of a sudden you'll be like looking at your bank app and you're like, was I walking somewhere? Because it's automatic. We've trained it. It's a habit now. It's not a choice. It's similar for kids. They're averaging 8.5 hours a day on drool tech, 4.5 hours on social media. That matters because Twenge et al. In 2017 and all the way through now has proven a causal link between an increased use in social media and a decline in mental health. Let's say that clearly. You have young people who are amazing humans on social media. None of them are doing better from their time on social media. Maybe they're crushing life and they're just not that affected by social media. That's awesome. But all of them are doing a little worse. Social media and the developing brain are antithetical to each other. It is a combative relationship, and at best, your kid is just not that hurt. At worst, your child is doing significantly worse than he or she would be doing. Specifically, young ladies. I know, even the crutches couldn't handle that point. There's a massive reduction in academic success. This is why school districts around the state and around the nation are going phone-free, meaning they're not using their phones at all, not even passing period, not during lunch. If your district hasn't, maybe bring it up. Bring the anxious generation, because when you have the anxious generation in the room, they can't go, nuh-uh. They have to bring you counter research, and you won't find it. There's no research. It's like, and here's that incredible nugget that we totally forgot about. They'll use things like, but for this unique minority of students, they increase their relational security like they do. That it is also the highest risk group when using social media. Like 50% of them are telling us that it's not going great. So it's true. That is the one group who's saying something positive. It's also the group who's seeing the biggest negative. We want to keep this in mind, not because phones are bad, not because social media is evil, because social media is currently antithetical to the health of our teens when it comes to their mental well-being. Can you use it well? Yes, we'll talk about that in a minute. But just know it's an uphill battle, and you have to be intentional with it. Why do we care? Because tool tech and drool tech are different by design. It's not an accident. Social media works different than Microsoft Word on purpose. That is a business model. It is a choice they've made. It's why Roblox is a game you shouldn't let your kids play. I know, I'm coming in here with all the hot takes. Read the Hindenburg report. It came out 6 weeks ago. It will convince you that Roblox is a step too far. Why? Business model. It's how they plan to make their money. And they don't care about the wellness of your child. They've been very clear about that. Might they at some point? Hopefully. They magically came out with some more safety protocol, like 15 days after the report was published. Amazing how you can be so snappy on child safety if you need to. They're different by design. That's what we care about. So, first chance to turn to your neighbor. Number one, which tech does your family use well? I don't mean categorically tool or drool. I mean a specific tech name. Could be phones, could be games, could be movie night, could be word processing. I don't know. Which tech causes the most conflict? If you're going to fight about tech, which specific tech do you guys have the most fights on? 3 minutes. Go. Ten seconds. If you have any questions from that, please jot them down. We'll try to get to them. But we're going to roll because our next conversation is, all right, we know the two types of tech. We understand why they work differently. But at the end of the day, how do we even talk about that? We call it a reset. I love this tool. When parents come to me and go, okay, but how do I start the process? When grandparents go, all right, how do I bring this up with my kids for their kids, for your grandchildren? How do I talk about this with my spouse? Reset. Reset is the resource that allows you to fight for your family member, not just with them. Here's how it works. There's 5 areas. They're all written on that paper. Relationships and responsibilities, emotion, sleep, enjoyment, time. And there's only one question. Does this technology, this smartphone, this video game, this show, this music you listen to, this news feed, does it impede your relationships and responsibilities, your emotions, sleep, enjoyment, and time? And if it does, you now have a talking point. So you can go and say, I've noticed when you listen to that music, your relationships get worse. Do you notice that? 99% of teenagers know when their tech is unhealthy. Doesn't mean they care, but they see it. Doesn't mean they know what to do about it, but it doesn't mean they're shocked. Most young people are not shocked at their lack of health. And worst case scenario, if you can't get them to talk about their own tech, ask them about their friends. Which of your friends uses tech the best? Which of your friends would you say has the biggest problem with social media? They're always happy to narc on a friend. And it gets the conversation rolling in an environment that isn't quite so Fifth Amendment, right? It's very hard to self-report. So let's walk through this real quick. Relationships and responsibilities. Your relationships are family, friends. When you play that video game, I've noticed you're more mean to your sister. Do you notice that? They might say, yeah, because she's annoying. And be like, well, that's true, but she's always annoying. You're only mean to her after you play this game. That's your conversation point. Have you noticed? What should we do? Might say, you know what? I just really need her to not be touching the buttons while I'm trying to play. I just really need her to not be like breathing in my ear while I'm playing. We need to take turns because like whatever it might be, there might be an valid explanation. There might just be, nope, this game is affecting your ability to be kind to someone God has told you to be kind to. If that game is causing you to sin, it just became expendable because you are not. Right? That's our conversation point. You're not being mean. You're not mad at them. It gives you a very clear touch point. Same thing with responsibilities. That's going to be your family responsibilities and your outside of family responsibilities. So, family responsibilities. You need to show up for meals. So show up for dinner because we're having a meal together. Maybe it's breakfast, whatever your family meal is. I don't know. But that's a family expectation. There's chores. There's things you need to do to be a part of our family. Partly because it's developing character and responsibility. Partly because we just got to get stuff done and we need your help. So I've noticed that when you listen to that music, you start skipping meals. I've noticed when you watch those shows, you blow off family duties. Then you have outside of family stuff like sports. I noticed when you started playing that game, just came out at the beginning of wrestling season, and you dropped out of wrestling. We called it the Destiny flu when I was teaching because Destiny kept dropping new updates, and kids would just be gone for 4 straight days while they beat the new update, and then they would show back up because they were sick. But it always aligned with a big AAA game drop. That's an important conversation about our yes being yes and our no being no and what we need to do to make that happen. That game is cool, but it doesn't trump the things you actually need for your daily life. Relationships and responsibilities. It's a talking point. It doesn't mean that tech is the problem. It means that tech is our talking point, and we need to figure out what's going on here. I'll return to that idea in a moment. Emotions. I don't mean this makes me feel good. I mean emotions are a talking point when you need it to be okay. You will find young people that need AirPods in with a slow drip of lo-fi in order to function. They feel anxious. We need to call that what it is. That's called coping. You are coping. You are self-medicating with technology. You need your phone. If your phone is not on you, you feel anxious. If you don't have games, you feel angry and bored. If you don't have social media, you feel invalidated, and you are convinced that everyone is both having more fun and talking about you in a bad way. We need to call that what it is. Getting in there to make those things go away is coping with technology. It's just another form of medication. I'm not blaming you. I'm also not excusing it. That's not sustainable. That's not going to make it long term. So the question is, I understand this is how we're functioning now. You need this thing to be emotionally level. How are we going to fix that? What's our next step? Anna Lemke wrote the book Dopamine Nation. It's a tough read. If you've read it, you know what I'm talking about. Don't go in that willy-nilly, but do know it's a beautiful book to talk about how does the brain function in an overstimulated world. She says you need 30 days away from the offending tech in order to reset your brain to be able to enjoy real life again. If you have a kid that when they miss their like Friday night is video game night, but sister has a swim meet, so you didn't get video games. And I don't just mean they're like, oh, I was so excited to play with friends. Like the wheels come off. They say things like, I hate you guys. You hate me. I wish I was dead. When those statements come up, they are not just being teenagers who are way over the top about everything. That's actually real to them. Life is not worth living if they can't get back up to that spot that only video games or only social media can get them to, because real life can't compete with that level of stimulation. That is a warning sign. It's a call for help, and you lovingly step in and go, hey, couldn't help but notice this is clearly hurting you and or others. We're going to take this away, not because we're mad at you, not because we're trying to teach you some like uphill both ways kind of character lesson, but because this is clearly unhealthy. And we need to remove it so that you have a chance to be healthy. It takes 30 days, and she's very clear in her book. There's no like halfway with that. If you have a kid who's overstimulated, the only thing you can do is cold turkey and walk away, which is brutal because for 2 weeks, your kid is going to be bummed. And then for another 2 weeks, we'll slowly recalibrate until you have that lovely, energetic, present, amazing human that you remember from whenever the last time they were healthy. Emotions is our talking point. They will understand, they won't necessarily appreciate where you're coming from, but it is a talking point we have to pay attention to. Sleep. Really, just if you have drool tech in the bedroom, you're losing sleep. Let's run through just like a quick survey of why this matters. First of all, no one needs a $1,000 alarm clock. That's the alarm clock that I use. My wife has one, I have one. They run on 2 AAA batteries. They make it 6 months, so you'll change the batteries once a year. You can order it on Amazon. It'll be home before you are tonight. It's not a perfect alarm clock. Maybe there's one you'll like more, but we like that one. It does all the things you want, and the light doesn't stay on all night, so you can actually sleep. It works pretty well. Matthew Walker, Why We Sleep. Effectively, if I were to sum up the book, sleep affects everything. Probably most important for young people, academic success, emotional intelligence, your ability to inhibit your behaviors lowers with a lack of sleep, and academic learning, physical growth. Without going too much into it, basically, if you were to not get enough sleep, I'm going to go into it. Let's do it. 2 groups did the same amount of workouts, ate the same amount of calories for 2 months. At the end of 2 months, they both lost similar amounts of weight, but the group who slept less than 5 hours a night, who lost the same amount of weight, doing the exact same workout routine and the same diet routine as the other group, only lost muscle. You could work out for 2 months, eat right, do everything right, and at the end of it, lose muscle. Like you would have been better off not working out if you don't sleep enough. The general idea is, imagine a sponge. When your body works out, it doses that sponge with training stress, TSS. That sponge is now full. The only way to squeeze the sponge out and get any results is to sleep. If you do not sleep, your body's like, I'm super stressed. This person clearly isn't doing well. I'm going to go into survival mode. And do you know the first thing your body holds on to when it goes into survival mode? Fat. Because it needs fat to survive. You will die without body fat. It's like, I'm super stressed. I'm clearly going to be in this for the long haul. I need to survive. And if it needs extra calories, like you're putting yourself in a caloric deficit between exercise and diet, it will just burn muscle to survive. Because it will not let go of the body fat because it doesn't want to die. It also releases something called cortisol. Guess what cortisol does to your academics, your memory? It deletes it. Not only does cortisol delete your memories, it deletes the good ones first. 2 groups studied the same set of lists, same 2 lists of words, same amount of time for the same length of time, 15 minutes a day, 2 weeks. End of 2 weeks, not only did this 5-hour group, a 5-hour sleep group, remember fewer words, they only remembered the bad ones, like sad and dark. Your brain on cortisol not only remembers less, it only remembers the bad stuff, which means if you're feeling anxious and depressed and you're sleeping fewer than 8 hours a night, the first thing you need to do is start sleeping and get tech out of your bedroom. I mean smart TVs, gaming consoles, laptops, smartphones, e-readers. I know e-readers, we have voracious readers, little Henrys, right? Just get a book from the library. And if you don't like the library, buy a book. Say, this is your bedtime book. You can only read this book at bedtime. Don't take it to school. Don't take it on the bus. Don't read it downstairs. If your child literally reads through that once a week, I promise you it's cheaper than counseling. So don't give them an e-reader. I know they're cool. They're just not safe enough yet. All of them have the internet. All of them have some ability to connect to the world out there, and they're just a little too far. Maybe you're smart enough to make a Raspberry Pi into an e-reader and make your own homebrew. That's cool. But off-the-shelf e-readers are just a little too much for the bedroom. Sleep causes, or lack of sleep can cause panic attacks. I found out that panic attacks have 2 sides. You have the normal anxiety side, and then you have the kind that I got in 2020 when trying to start a speaking nonprofit in my garage in the cold and the dark. You get the Hulk side. Did you know this? There's a fight and a flight. Most people get the flight side. They're like, I feel like I'm being chased. Like, I feel like I'm in a fist fight right now, but I don't know who I'm fighting. I just have all the rage. Like, it's anxiety. Sleep. Get it. It's linked to depression and suicide. A lack of sleep cannot be adapted to. You can't just train yourself to get used to 5 hours a night. A loss of 1 hour. This needs some explanation, but it's good to know. Loss of 1 hour is like losing 2 years academically. So the study followed elementary school kids. They put sleep monitors and they scatter plotted their progress over those 2 weeks. And they found out that at the 1 hour loss, so a kid goes from 8 to 7, the kid's academic performance dropped 2 years on average. That means not just with technology, but in our case technology, but that means our super cool little opportunities like my son because who's surprised that Owen, super type A rule follower, loves himself some baseball? He's like, you mean there's a sport that's just built around rules with more rules? And then he became a pitcher. It was playoff baseball. He was in the 9th inning. His team is tied. There's a runner on 3rd. The kid keeps tipping off the ball. I go to Owen. I'm like, Owen, what were you thinking in that pitching matchup? And he's like, I was thinking how the kid was taking my pitch count. And I was like, you're weird. Most people would be thinking about the runner on 3rd, right? That young man had games that would end at 10 p.m. As a fourth grader. Not my proudest parenting moment. That's not great for his academic success, and I have to make some calls on that. Sometimes I have to go, hey, coach, we're not going to be at this game because I love my son and I want him to grow. We have to make those calls, but technology is the one that's more pervasive than sports. Sports usually have an end to a season. It's a couple weeks. You can make it through. As soon as you start getting sleep, their learning jumps right back up. This isn't like a permanent issue. Enjoyment. Oh, go back. There you go. All I mean for this is, do they still find the flavor of life? Do they still enjoy the things they are passionate about? What I'm concerned with enjoyment, what I want you to look for, is there a kid that used to love all of these activities? Technology entered, eclipsed all of their attention and joy. These activities wilt. And the only thing that survives and thrives is that one piece of technology. They got a smartphone, and this is the only thing they care about now. They got that video game, and that's the only thing they want to talk about and do anymore. They got that music, and that's the only thing they want to invest in. And life isn't okay when it's not around. That's what we're talking about with enjoyment. I don't mean your kid went from playing Legos to using AutoCAD, or went from playing guitar to playing soccer. Not what we're talking about. We're talking about introduction of a tech and the death of a passion or an interest. Finally, it's time. Can you be content? Are you constantly fighting about how much time? You agreed on it, everyone's okay, and then all of a sudden, people aren't okay anymore, and it's a regular, consistent battle. If you are, that's a talking point. Like, hey, I've noticed. You don't seem to be okay with the agreed upon time we had. What's going on? They might go, well, I actually realized I can't play this game, or it takes me 15 minutes to log onto the computer and to get everything set up. And like, okay, so maybe you need 40 instead of 30 minutes. Fine. We agree to that. But maybe it's that you're trying to play World of Warcraft and only do it 3 hours a week. That's probably a losing environment. That game won't let you be satisfied at 3 hours a week. It has 59 out of 60 levels as a tutorial for one class. Expect to spend hundreds and hundreds of hours to be excellent at that game. That's a conversation point. Is this game a good choice for us right now? In your elbow partner conversation, I don't want you to talk about what your kid's reset is. I want you to think about yours. So let's run through this. You'll hear a little bit more about this tomorrow, but my reset with a particular type of technology was a 5 out of 5. It impeded my relationships and responsibilities, my emotions, my sleep, my enjoyment, and my time. I was a 5 out of 5. At a major crux, married, master's degree, house, wife. Full-blown adult. Very unhealthy with my tech. So before we go and grade our children and kids, you get to do this as well, young people in the room. I want you to, in your head right now, think, what is your reset? And a fist of 5 is where you hold it in front of me. Fist means none of those areas are impeded by tech. 5 would mean all of them are. And some version in between. Right now, show me your grade. What's your reset? Don't tell your neighbor. Right now, my more healthy would be a 2. My current technology use. What's your reset? Fist to 5. I see a couple numbers. I can actually see your hands. This isn't just like I'm actually looking. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, come on. The room's not that big. I don't think you understand how long I can handle awkward silence. Awesome. Thank you. Hands down. I hope you write that down real quick, right next to reset. Because that's going to be a key talking point when coming humbly to your children. Not that you're perfect, but that you recognize your own tech issues. And if you don't know, have your children give you your reset score based on their experience. They're very insightful. I ask them all the time when I talk with them, how do your parents use their tech? It's a lovely talking point. They tell me all the things. The question then, which is kind of a part B on this, I'm not going to go through all 5 of these just for the sake of time, but I do want to cover the first one. How do we support healthy tech? So if it's going well, how do we help ensure that it goes well? And if it's not great, what do we do instead? We know this whole Matthew 5:28 through 30, if something causes you to sin, you cut it off and gouge it out. All right, so this technology is a cause of an unhealthy reset. The reason I bring that up, and I had mentioned it before, is because sometimes it's symptomatic. I've had young people where their lives are going off the rails and they just medicate with technology because they don't know what else to do. It's a call for help. You can step in and you can help them fix the bully, the trauma, the anxiety, the mental health, the overwork, whatever it might be that they're running from. You got to fix the symptom, fix the problem and the symptom can go away. Sometimes tech is the problem. They're actually just overstimulated. They've experienced trauma, shame, bullies, violence, whatever it might be online. And they don't know how to talk about it. You need to intervene, remove the problem, and they can become healthy. So we call that the pebble and the blister. We're not sure if technology is the thing causing the rub. It's the pebble in the shoe. Or if it's the blister that shows there's a rub somewhere else. The conversation will tell you that. The question is, now that we know there's a problem, what do we do? It's a big list. There's 5 fixes. Beneficial stress, analog adventures, which is like adventures at the pace of real life. Loving boundaries, real world friends, and staying hope focused. So we're not just like, tech is bad, run away. But we're saying, hey, I love you, and this doesn't support your greater purpose. I'm a loving parent. You asked me for a good gift. I'm not going to hand you a scorpion. Gospel Tech Podcast, I go through multiple episodes where we walk through these 5. Today, I'm just going to walk through beneficial stress. Beneficial stress is an idea that comes up in The Anxious Generation, Jonathan Haidt's book. Beneficial stress involves risk, responsibility, and free play. So here's those 3 teased out. First, you need risk. That's called the pump track. That one's in Leavenworth. That's my son way over there on an itty-bitty little bike. And then Hadley running around. Can you get hurt on one of these? Yeah. You can eat asphalt hard. You can break stuff. But as I mentioned earlier, bones heal, brains don't always. Emotional damage can be tough, and it doesn't just get better with time. Allowing your child an appropriate amount of risk. I don't mean send them to play Frogger on the freeway. I mean, your child is ready for a certain amount of danger, and they need that as a young person. They have to experience the opportunity where they could get hurt. Maybe it's climbing a tree. Maybe it's playing in the backyard. I don't know. But they need the opportunity to experience some of their limits, physically, emotionally, etc. Sports can be great for this. So keep that in mind. This is actually just a humble brag, but I've been to the Oregon coast when it was sunny. Yeah. But playing in the ocean, that's dangerous, especially the Oregon coast. Kids know how to swim. Adults were nearby supervising. That is not a cure-all. We all know the tragic situations that can happen. That was a calculated risk, and they were willing to play in water that's just above Arctic levels of coldness. Then there's responsibility. Responsibility always involves risk, because there's a chance they won't be responsible. That is Henry, my very present son, biking himself to piano practice. He doesn't look back once. He just rolls. Now, Henry's very present. He doesn't always think about the future. Crossing streets can be scary. We've walked it, we've biked it, and he knows one house between here and there. It's 6 blocks. He doesn't have a phone. There's no blue dot to tell me he arrived. He should be back in my garage within an hour. And he was. I actually just found a backpack in my garage because Henry had apparently just dropped his bag and walked inside my house and played Legos because he felt awesome. And it was really cool to watch him experience that success. Responsibility. Could it go wrong? Yes. Can he get hurt? There's risk involved. But finding an appropriate amount of responsibility to give that child faithful in little things and then faithful in bigger things, even when my absent-minded professor son bikes himself to piano. Then there's things like, much less, dangerous would be allowing them to fail. This is both of my sons fishing the Puyallup River. This is a video that if it was not ProPresenter, you'd be able to see both of them fighting fish, the fish being physically on the gravel, and then the fish spitting the hooks. And then it cuts right before both sons burst into tears. Now, could I have run up with a net and grabbed those? I could have. Did I? I did not. Do they both remember this vividly? Yeah. It's part of this opportunity of like, you're going to do something on your own, even if it means you do it worse than I would have done it. And that is a key part of growing up. I mentioned before that technology loves to promise us the feeling of adventure and success. I can feel like I've accomplished something, but there was no risk. There was no actual investment. There was no chance of me getting hurt because this thing is meant to be conquered. Fish aren't. You could starve to death for all they care. They're going to fight you as much as they can. And it is a beautiful lesson in responsibility and a simple one. No one has to get hurt, other than maybe the fish. This is another example of responsibility and free play combined. We were camping at Ohanapekosh on Mount Rainier. My son said, hey, we're packing up. Can we go play? I'm like, that's fine. I'd prefer you to not be here as I put the tent away. They go to play in the woods. No way to communicate with them. There's no cell service. They know the area. They know when they've gone too far. They know how to survive overnight in the woods. So I've got my responsibility and risk piece covered. I go out looking for them after about 2 hours. I can hear them at some point. I get closer and closer. I go and find them. I find this. Now, this is 10 a.m. It's 42 degrees. Henry is the pride of Norway and does not have the body fat to be not wearing a shirt. He has apparently pulled off his shirt and jacket and put it on a lean-to they made. Also important to note, I don't know the kid in the middle. I don't know where you find a spare kid in the middle of the woods, but they did. And of course, my rule-following firstborn has decided bike helmets are a good decision while playing early in the morning in the woods. Might as well just buckle up, Dad. There's never too much safety. Now, is there a chance? Yeah, their back's right there to about a 20-foot ledge off a rock. I was not there. Could someone have fallen? Yes. We've been through enough. They're safe enough. They have enough risk and responsibility built up. I wouldn't start there if your kid, like, can't play on a jungle gym without breaking something. But there's real risk here. That could have been a bummer. That I would not have been right there to make better. Well, we're in the woods, so nothing would have been better quick. Keep that in mind when we're talking about what could this look like. At some point, free play, the idea that you're not there to fix it. I'm not telling you to do that all the time. I'm not telling you to be negligent. I'm saying there comes a point where your child needs the opportunity to play independently. Not on the internet. That's not what we're discussing. At the pace of real life, with real-world responsibility and risk. Why not the internet? Because the internet is never a fair playing field. 100% of the time, which we'll get here in a minute, the internet involves forces that you have to actively stay against. Trees aren't actively trying to hurt my children. There were three kinds of beneficial stress. There's risk, there's responsibility, and there's free play. My question for you to tell your neighbor in just 1 minute is which type of stress can you add this week? Go. Ten seconds. All right. Third section, how do we make it safe at home? We have two types of tech. We know if it's healthy. We know what we can do about it. But there is some actual practicality to this. There's some things we have to do. Namely, what I like to call building hedges. And before we do that, I want to make sure that we have discussed this idea that the internet is the new cul-de-sac. It's where kids go to hang out. It's where they're playing. 90% of kids go online on a regular basis. 50% of kids say they are connected to the internet almost constantly. Not hyperbole. The stats are showing that for most of their waking day, they are somehow engaging it on a regular basis. But we need to know where the cul-de-sac of the internet is located. It's located next to a freeway and a federal penitentiary in the red light district at midnight. So that's what the internet is. Your kid can absolutely go there and play, and their friends are there. The question is it good for them? That's where the hedges come in. Now, you can actually kind of see. I don't care the size of your hedge. If you look at this picture, can you see my little red dot? You can't. That's too bad. There's people in front of those hedges. Those hedges are like 100 feet tall. I just want you to think them as permeable hedges. These are not permanent structures. You're not building walls tall enough that your child can't make a mistake. It doesn't work. It didn't work with the Menage a line. It didn't work with your childhood when those people put up those bulletproof barriers that you blew right through without telling them. Instead, we're going to build a hedge in 3 areas. We're going to build it around our devices, around our network, and around our family. Those hedges are going to allow us to have intentional conversations, to prepare our children for difficult things, and to raise them up in the way they should go, so that when a mistake is made with technology, you can intervene in love, not in rage, and say, hey, I've noticed this seems to be too much for you to be healthy and well. Therefore, it just became expendable because you are not. And then move on with your life. For example, on a network. So a network is the thing that provides you your internet at home. That's what we're talking about. If you have internet at home, you need network protection, because the devices that run on your network need to follow your family's rules. 2 great options: the Griffin router. That thing, so there's a cable that comes out of your wall and it plugs into a modem, and that takes the internet gobbledygook and makes it usable data. That then gets broadcast with a router, and if you have a router like the Griffin router, your whole house with the internet now follows your Griffin router rules. Rules follow in 2 ways. You can set rules by device category, like house device, family device, parent device. This is so that you can set like an 8 p.m. bedtime for kid devices, but mom and dad's laptop can still work. You can shut off the smart TV, but the Roomba can still do its vacuuming, right? Like, that's the idea behind the categories. And then you can do filtering. We don't use YouTube. You can't do Minecraft. You can't, like, whatever your rules are. You can set time limits. It's only usable between 3 and 5 p.m. on odd days, whatever you want. The Griffin router allows that kind of functionality. Friend comes over with their own Xbox. They want to connect to your Wi-Fi. It has to follow your family's rules, all that stuff. So if you want accountability with your internet, you're going to have some kind of hedge around it. Some of it has default built-in stuff. That's great. It's a good start. But these help you see who's using it, where they're going, what time did they use it, and it's a great way to catch burner devices. Burner devices are old phones when families upgrade, like they have an iPhone 10, but they didn't get rid of it. And the kid takes it and gives it to a friend at school. And that friend comes home with a device that doesn't have cell service, but it can use Wi-Fi. It'll show up on your network. You just click has to sign in and be approved for your network on a Griffin router, and it'll say, new device just popped up. Give it internet? And you're like, interesting. I didn't install a new device on our network. Who has the new device, right? It's just that extra barrier. The point is not catch people making mistakes. The point is the internet is actively dangerous. So let's put a cage around it. Let's just make sure that we know what we're up against. And the Bark Home is just a simpler version. Instead of being a standalone device that you set up an app for, it just plugs into your existing device and gives you app functionality very similar to what Bark does. Or I'm sorry, what Griffin does. They're both great. They both work. Griffin router for a whole new system on the new 6G technology, which is laser fast, is like $250. If you go to their website, though, they opt to you buying 2 of them. You don't need 2 of them. You need 1, unless you have bigger than a 3,500 square foot house. Then you would need 2 of them. But if you're under 3,500 square feet, 1 works great. And it increased my internet speed by 30% just from switching to it. Bark Home doesn't do any of that. It just gives you the function, none of the hardware safety stuff. Okay? We can talk more if you have in the Q&A time. Then we go devices. This matters because your smartphone doesn't care about a hedge around your home network. The whole point of a smart device is to keep you connected when you're not at home. So if I have a smartphone and I get to take my smartphone to my room, your home network no longer matters to me. I can drop a hotspot and connect to any device I want, and you don't have any accountability on it. You need to set a standard for smartphones going away when you get home. The whole point of the smartphone was to keep you connected. I have one with me here. My wife can call me on it. When I go home, it goes just on top of a little counter in our kitchen, and I leave it there. Do I check it throughout the day? Sure. I'll go around and check it throughout the day. If I'm doing really unhealthy and 2 of my 5 reset are really firing on all cylinders, I'll compulsively check it. But it keeps going back in its little safety spot. I just use it worse. The reason we want to practice leaving our devices because we're modeling it for our kids. When their friends come over, you're going to ask them to leave their devices somewhere. Because if you're allowing a smartphone anywhere in your house, you no longer are in control of that internet environment. It's uncomfortable. There might be friends who decide they like the internet more than you. Here's the cool part. They weren't actually a friend. Friends need to do 3 things. Let's be very clear on this. Friends need to make you a priority, meaning they value you. That's the second piece. Priority means you are first among many. Okay, they have multiple things that are important. You are important to them because they value you as an equal. You're not a pity project, and you're not someone they idolize. You're a human being they can share life with, and you're in real life. That's our third. You need real-world friends who consider you valuable and make you a priority. Out of all the things they can do, they make sure they make time with you. If they don't do those 3 things and smartphones are their breaking point, they weren't a real friend, and you figured that out sooner than later, congratulations. Maybe even they're going to learn they don't have many friends. You were the closest they had, and maybe they do want a friend more than they want a smartphone. But setting that boundary is awkward. It's uncomfortable. Nobody likes to be picked second to a smartphone. But it's a standard you won't know if you're second unless you have it. Great options for smartphones. Parents are like, yeah, my kid wants a smartphone. What should I get? A Bark phone. You should get a Bark phone. Bark phones are awesome. You actually should start with a Gab phone. That's what my 11-year-old will get when he's old enough to need a phone. Like he's starting to do independent sports and he's communicate with me through text. He's going to get a Gab phone. I think that's the next device. If it's not, I'll return to this. But Bark phones are great because they default to a dumb phone and then they scale. So you can release apps one at a time. They have accountability. So you can say, we're turning off screen time during these times. You can't visit that website. Give you an alert. Child arrived safely at school. Bark is very useful without invading your child's privacy. You're not reading every text. You're just getting notifications based on text algorithms. So it's reading the language. It's not looking at the pictures. This is not a pornography catcher. This is a self-harm, mental health, bullying catcher. Stranger danger. That's what Bark's really good at. And also helping you set the device up for success. So you're not just giving them all of the 8+ apps. You're giving them the one app they've earned. They need WhatsApp to communicate with their volleyball team. You can have WhatsApp. And I have accountability baked right in with Bark. You can try to add it to an iPhone. iPhones are notoriously difficult because they're great under authoritarian regimes. They're very good at user privacy. But children aren't under authoritarian regimes. And they're very hard to keep accountable. Covenant Eyes is a great resource for pornography. It uses AI, scans all the pictures, sends it to 2 accountability partners. I have it on my phone. My phone's actually delightfully dumb. No social media, not even YouTube, because ADD. And it has Covenant Eyes, so 2 people always see what I do. I like that because I often meet people who are like, I just wish I had more self-control. I'm like, I understand that. Have 2 people with you at all times. Right? What would you not have done in life if you knew 2 other people would have been in the room? This is good for young dating couples. Like, I just wish we had more self-control. I'm like, you do. Just invite her dad next time. We built of self-control. Covenant Eyes is like that. It just builds out into reality the truth that you're never actually the only one seeing this stuff. So, since the Fifth Amendment is hard, other people get the information, and then they can follow up with you, not to drop the hammer and be like, you made another mistake, but to go, hey, you didn't bring it up, so I'm going to bring it up. What am I looking at here? And then you have that conversation. Maybe they have some perfectly reasonable explanation. More than likely, they just have some repentance they need to work on, and that's difficult. It's a way you can love them. The last hedge needs to go around our family. And the short version is, make sure the tech is safe, ready, and good. Safe. It has to be a good decision. Luke 11:11, which I've already referenced once, said, which one of you, if your child asks for an egg, will give him a scorpion? Your kid this Christmas go, Mom and Dad, I want a good gift. Don't go, great. Here's something that can hurt you. Make sure the tech itself is safe. What does safe tech look like? All right, safest tech possible is tool tech. There's no behavioral design in it. no web browser, no app store. Accountability baked right in. That's going to be the safest level of tech. Is that the only tech you can use? No. But if you want safe tech default, that's it. So I mentioned the Gab phone. Gab phone's awesome. Defaults to safety. They've got a watch. It goes on sale right around Thanksgiving, actually. Sometimes they give them away for free, and you just pay the monthly fees. It's like $30 a month, I think, for a Gab phone. Great starter device. No browser. Hard baked in. No way to start it in default mode and then enter a link and then get to a browser. It's a very nice closed system. If you enter Gospel Tech at checkout, you save 10%. We partnered with them. I don't make money on that. That goes right to the nonprofit. Bark phone, which I mentioned, really like all the features a Bark phone has. It's the next phone you should get. Your child, if they have shown responsibility in little things, which we'll cover here next, and have asked for a smart device, and they're 15, that's when you give them a smartphone. Kids do not need a smartphone before 15. If you've given one already, I'm assuming you've decided it's safe, that they're ready, and the fruit is good. Let's keep going. Gospel Tech 10. And if you haven't, it's perfectly reasonable to go, ooh, I made an oopsie. We're going to change course. Are they ready? Luke 16. We're told that one who's faithful in little will be faithful with much. If you cannot hold down a healthy reset in real life, there's a good chance you can't hold one down in digital life. If you can't be nice to your siblings in real life, there's a good chance you can't be nice to strangers on the internet. If you can't follow through on commitments in real life, there's a good chance when there's a designed program to fight you on making good choices, you're not going to make good choices. Because I can't trust you in these choices, why would I trust you with those ones? You're not blaming your child. You're not shaming your child. You're making a factual statement. I can't trust you to go there. Show me I can trust you to be here. And we can extend it to there. This is a perfectly reasonable conversation when withdrawing tech. Like, hey, I actually loved giving that to you, and it's proven too much. I had a young man in West Virginia be like, my parents will never give me a smartphone. I went and talked to mom. She's like, no, we gave him a smartphone. He committed a felony with his smartphone. He failed to mention that. I then got the mom to agree. Would you allow him, though, to use these apps on your device? She said, yeah. Pitched it to the boy. He said, I'd rather not use the app than use it on her phone. She said, that could be arranged. So we had a young man who was past the age of 15 who really wanted a device but was not faithful. He wasn't repentant, yet alone faithful. Don't give your kid that tech. If your child has promised to hurt him or herself or others with their choices online, don't give them the internet. It's not a human right. We have exactly 0 kids who are making good choices who have not asked for a smartphone, turning into adults, finding a phone laying around and going on a bender with an Apple iPhone stamped on their lower back when they wake up. It's not happening. We are finding young people who are going, you know what, I don't need a smartphone because I'm in college and I have my goals and I don't need this device to try to set goals for me. We have a lot of young people that are ditching smart devices and going to things like fancier Gab phones. What kind? What content is appropriate? And what are our safety protocol? What happens when something goes wrong? I sent my son to a basketball tournament today, my 11-year-old, and we said, one of your friends is going to have a smartphone at this tournament. If they pull their phone out and start playing video games or being on the internet, you walk away. If you see anything that makes you feel uncomfortable or that fits what we've talked about pornography, we've talked about God made your body and that's amazing, and there's misuses of your body. If you see that, you go tell this adult or that adult that you saw something that made you feel uncomfortable or unsafe, and you let them intervene. I don't need you to be a hero. I do need you to walk away. Now, luckily for me, my firstborn's a rule follower. So he does those things. But that is the conversation we need to at least have. If you need help, gospeltechworkshop.com. I made an online workshop to help you walk through this. If you enter GT Workshop, you'll get $15 off. Again, that doesn't go to me. That would make it $35, and you could use it. It's 2 hours if you did it straight through, online PDF workbook to guide you through the conversation. How do you talk it out, and then how do you walk it out, are the 2 halves of that. Finally, we're looking at, is it good? We now know, is it safe? Are they ready? Is it good? Did you know the Bible's actually really clear? People are like, there's no Bible verses about technology. Bet. Galatians 5:19 through 21. I highlighted a few. Now, the works of the flesh are evidence: sexual immorality, impurity, sensuality, idolatry, sorcery, enmity, strife, jealousy, fits of anger. The highlighted ones are ones that I am aware of, that there is technology built around driving that outcome. There's entire websites and apps built around driving sensuality, driving idolatry, anything you look to for your purpose other than Jesus. That's every follow you've ever seen where they're like, grind nation, just work harder because you matter more than anyone. If you like Andrew Tate idolizes himself. He makes t-shirts. If you don't know who he is, God bless you. Enmity, strife, division. If you've read anything on the internet, say over the last 12 months, maybe related to politics, that drove enmity, those people are the worst. Strife, we're going to be the solution once we defeat them. And division, we could never work together because we are clearly good and they are clearly the bad ones. That, my friends, is not fruit we are looking to bear in Jesus. And I'll end on this one, fits of anger. If you've never seen a rage quit montage on any social media platform, Google it, they're funny. But there's entire day jobs where people collect all the videos of people raging at technology and then just put them together for you to enjoy and watch by the millions. But then there's other fruit. The fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, self-control. If you had to pick 3, love, joy, self-control. Young people, here's your get out of jail free card. Your parents are like, why should I get it for you? And be like, because it produces love, joy, and self-control. I promise you, 100% of the time, you find technology that produces love, choosing the highest good for another person, joy, the ability to be present even in suffering because Christ lives in you, not you living for your own, and self-control, the ability to mitigate your decisions based on the humility and meekness of Christ. You find any tech that develops those 3. I'd even say one of those 3. Without producing a whole heaving host of these things. Your parents will buy you one of those and get one for a friend. Because we love you. And if we could give you technology that produces that fruit, the company is going to go bonkers. That's why Bark and Gab exist, because we're like, wow, you mean this tech actually allows my child to exist in a digital age and it doesn't actively hate them? I want that for you. I am planning on giving my child that technology. He needs something to communicate in a digital space, and that tech doesn't fight him on good decisions. The question at the end of the day, when we talk about safe, ready, and good, is does it improve their reset? Now, this might sound facetious. People are like, is there really any tech that improves your relationships, responsibilities, emotion, sleep, enjoyment, time? Yeah, there is. My kids, the show Wild Kratts. You guys ever watched Wild Kratts? Chris and Martin Kratt. They go out into nature, they turn into little cartoon characters, and then they run around learning about animals. My kids will watch one 25-minute episode and spend an hour outside flipping rocks. If I can go 1 to 2 with any technology, you spend 30 minutes, I get an hour of nature time out of you, great. I now know lots of fun facts. Henry memorizes them all. He goes to the library. He gets every book on critters. And I don't exaggerate. Henry's a voracious reader. He skipped breakfast this morning just to read a book in his bed. I now know that only female mosquitoes drink blood. Did you know that? Male mosquitoes drink nectar. I now know that pigeons are the only bird that feed their young on milk. Gross. They produce it in their throats. It's disturbing. I know about Japanese spider crabs. They get 15 feet wide. Henry did a whole research paper on them. They're disturbing. My wife hates spiders, and crabs are just sea spiders. They're disturbing. You can have technology that improves your reset. It is possible. We just need to keep our eyes out for it because the best tech is the tech that's going to help our kids look more like Jesus. We're going to skip this for the sake of time. Reminder, there's 2 kinds of tech, tool and rule. We can assess, go back. We can assess if it's healthy using a reset as our conversational foundation. And we can build helpful hedges, making sure the tech is good, our children are ready. and that the fruit lines up with what we want to see for them, lovingly removing stuff that isn't helpful or healthful. Your next steps, though, are to read these notes tomorrow. You will remember more information if you read these while you're eating your breakfast or doing whatever. You could even talk about them as a family. The Gospel Tech Podcast, if you want more resources, there's 250 episodes now. It's about weekly that it comes out. You can listen to that as just a fresh reminder of what we're doing. And build a hedge. If you had to just do one thing from this, pick one of the 3 sections towards building a hedge. Maybe it's just go, hey, let's make a list of all the tech we use and put it on the tool or drool side. Let's just start there. But take a single step. Don't try to do all of it at once. It's overwhelming. It's an active process. And yeah, it keeps morphing because new tech comes out and your kid changes. So tech that used to be fine might not be fine next month, either because of the tech or because of your kid or because of some outside circumstance that's morphing. That's our conversation for tonight. Before we get to Q&A, I do have I'm blinking here. All right, I do have this last, maybe? Nah, whatever. All right, there was a survey. No, wait, not that, go back one. Yeah, that, not that thing. That's a survey where you can give me feedback. It's super helpful. If you give me honest feedback, I don't even have feelings anymore because I taught 8th grade for a decade. So you don't have to worry about my feelings. The main thing is the more specific, the better. Saying it's great is super cool, and I appreciate that. Saying why it's great, awesome. Saying it was lame, also good feedback, but I can't really do much about that until I know why it's lame. Did I talk too fast? Did I not say enough? Did I get distracted by yet another story about dudes pedaling a boat? Whatever it might be. But seriously, dudes pedaling a boat. So cool. Now, Q&A time. Do you have any questions for me? I'm sure you do. Do you have any you'd like to ask in front of other people? There's a microphone. There's one in the back. There's one right here.
What is beneficial stress?
All right. Yeah, say it in there so everyone can hear you.
What is beneficial stress?
Amazing. Beneficial stress is the idea initially launched by Jonathan Haidt in the book Coddling of the American Mind, and then returned to. It comes from the idea of stress wood. So the biodome was this concept that we're going to try to make an entirely enclosed environment. Do you remember this project? There were 2 of them. They both failed. They failed in part because they realized that in this environment, plants grew super fast, including their trees. But trees apparently need wind. If a tree doesn't have wind, it grows super fast, produces no roots, and topples. They need beneficial stress. Another example would be your microbial system for antibodies. Your body needs germs to have a strong immune system. It needs beneficial stress. Without any germs, you will die upon first contact, that we've seen tragically exemplified throughout history. Beneficial stress for your child is risk, responsibility, and free play. They need the chance to actually experience real-world harm at an appropriate level. Age-appropriate and child-appropriate. Meaning your 9-year-old might be able to do something my 9-year-old can't. I've got some 9-year-olds who are like sending gainers on BMX bikes off 30-foot cliffs. My 9-year-old can't do that. I'm happy when he chews gum and walks. So his beneficial stress is going to look different than your beneficial stress, but it needs to be something they gain because it's part of mental health. The reason 2/3 of American teenage girls said they experienced prolonged bouts of sadness and loneliness in 2022 is because they did not have enough real-world relationship and real-world beneficial stress. Boys, you weren't much better. It was 1 in 3. When 1 in 3 is our good number for kids experiencing mental illness, it's not a good situation. We have to get our kids back out there where they can experience some stress. Don't just send them to the woods for a weekend with no introduction. If you do send them to the woods, bring something warm, bring some games, and bring lots of delicious food and trick them into enjoying nature again. Okay? But nature's a great way to do it because it's hard to get overstimulated out there. Get into archery, get into airsoft, get into whatever's going to get you outside, but the idea is it needs to involve risk. Risk, responsibility, and free play, which is where organized sports drop. When the entire thing is based around getting you in front of a professional scout, that loses the free play aspect. Adults are organizing that just as much as adults are organizing their tech, and there is a limiting return on that. So beneficial stress is those three things. It's part of building a hearty, emotionally well human.
Does the Griffin router support network address translation?
So it depends on what your personal network setup looks like.
You want to hear it?
No, I don't. What I want you to do is, Griffin is amazing at doing all the nuance with like, well, I set up a private server in this way, and here's our firewall, and they'll help you.
Totally fine.
What's that?
That's totally fine. You don't need to say anymore. It does. I can already
so
tell.
Griffin, though, would tell you which on and offs. They're amazing. Their customer support is fantastic. And I've actually given this talk to Microsoft employees, and they like the Griffin. So you all are way smarter than me, I promise. Yes?
On those devices.
Oh, yeah, here. He's going to want you to give the microphone. I think there's interwebs people that need to hear you.
On those devices, you talked about the cost of purchasing those. Is there also a subscription fee for setting up those parental controls?
So Griffin router can be done without a subscription. Bark can be done without a subscription. On the hardware piece, Bark the software and Bark the phone and the Gab phone all have subscription fees. And yeah, so for the Wi-Fi routers, Griffin does not need I use the subscription-less one right now. I just purchased the device and then I use that. I don't use any of the premium stuff. There will come a day where I will upgrade to some of the premium filtering stuff. What I would say, it is expensive to protect your devices. And I understand that. I'm not trying to just say, yeah, you want healthy kids, just spend more money. I am saying if you have that technology, you already bought the thing that's doing the damage, right? You already bought the car, don't skimp on the seat belts and the airbags. So if we already have the tech that's going to send our kid down the internet superhighway, let's make sure we're willing to invest the money to make sure that we can mitigate some of the harm. It is dangerous, bad stuff will happen. We need some support in knowing what's going on out there. Anybody else? Okay. Oh, there's one more in the back.
So when you're dealing with other people's kids, I mean, you look around the room, there's what, probably 50 people here? There's roughly 50,000 people that live in Shelton, in the greater Shelton area. So if we say, hey, you know, kids, you're going to have to put your phone down in this one location, and that's just the way it's going to be. They want a friend to come over. I mean, how do you deal with that parent when they say, well, I don't want my kid to not have his phone? Like, how would you broach that?
Yeah, it's a great question. So let's take a half step back. You brought up the great question of like, this isn't how everyone's doing it. Doesn't mean they shouldn't be, it just means they're not yet, and they haven't wrapped their brains around that concept of why would this be a worthwhile endeavor, namely growing healthy kids, not just safe kids. So the first piece is you find at least one family, probably someone in this group of 50, who agrees with your family's guidance for your children. Find one family to make that new cul-de-sac. You can find 3 to 5, that's great, but if you have one, life gets a lot easier because now you have a norm. 2 families normal, one's just an outlier. Then you have the uncomfortable conversation, but it's the same conversation you had anyway. You're going to send your kid over there and be like, well, is the college-age brother home? Do you guys have just free-run internet? What are your rules on how late my kid can stay up? Like, you do the normal check stuff. Are you going to be home when my 10-year-old visits, or are they just at home by themselves? So now when they come over, you say, hey, just so you know, we're going to have your kid put down the phone. Here's my phone number. Text me when you need to get a hold of him. I'll make sure that he can message you right back. If you've done that with the parent, the kid says, yeah, but what about I need to have my device? Be like, it's cool, it's right here. I'm not going to hide it. I'm not locking it up. It's just right here on the counter. Come here and use it every time you need it. And then drop it right here. And if that becomes a teachable moment, you can bring it up multiple times like, hey, I noticed your phone's gone. I need that back over here. And if that becomes something that kid can't compulsively happen, you have one of 2 options. Either the child's choosing phone over your child, which is good to know up front, because there's going to be a future decision where that child does that anyway, making an internet decision at the cost of your child, or that kid's got issues that you get to lovingly intervene, and this gets to be a little safe space for that child to realize, like, did you know you don't need tech all the time? You can actually survive without it, which I say that facetiously, but there are kids who literally don't know that. They literally are like, no. Like, I would give up a lot of things before I would give up this device. So it is an uncomfortable conversation. You know what's more uncomfortable than your neighbor, though, is your family who's coming over for Thanksgiving. And it's going to be uncomfortable at Christmas. when your family who has that older kid brings that device with the games that you want none of your children to see, and you get to lovingly intervene and be like, hey, listen, this is our house, and we have some expectations. I love you. I'm so glad you guys have determined that that tech is safe and that your child is ready and that the fruit is good. We haven't made that decision yet. And by the way, definitely bring up those 3. Because at some point in there, they're going to be like, oh, we actually haven't talked about that. And actually, I'm 100% sure the fruit is bad. Maybe we should live differently. But you don't have to say that. You just say, I'm so glad that you've done the good parenting to get this tech. We haven't done that yet. That tech can't come here. Or whatever your rule is. It's uncomfortable. Will someone get mad at you? Yes. Will they say that you're a prude? Sure. But prude is just short for prudent. And that's delightful. Please be prudent with your children. The internet is not going to fight for them. It's only going to fight against them. So go ahead and have some of those rules. It is an uncomfortable conversation. I've had to have that. At my school, when they were showing Disney movies every lunch period, and I did the math, I'm like, you realize in a single week my child is clearing 2.5 hours of Disney movies during school time? Like, that's unacceptable. I'm like, don't do that. And like, worst case scenario, show them something valuable, right? Like, give them something. Listen to the Jesus Storybook Bible, like anything, like go nuts. That's an uncomfortable conversation because of course it's expected coming from me. They see me walking there and they're like, oh, Nathan again. But that's great because sometimes I don't even have to say it. You guys will experience this. You'll like start doing something on your phone and then you'll literally apologize to me. I don't say anything and I actually don't care. I'm not judging you. But like I make people uncomfortable around technology. You can too. It's a promise, not a threat. That would be the really long answer to a really short question. Have the hard conversation. You do it anyway. You're modeling a good example for your kids. You're going to find out the non-friends before they actually become a problem. And you're setting up deliberate boundaries. You're showing your kids, this is a conversation we can have, and we're not judging people. We're not telling them doing it wrong. I'm assuming that tech is a good choice for your family. That doesn't mean it's a good one for mine. Thanks for that last question. All right. We ran right over. I'll be here. You can come ask me your other questions if you've got them. And I'll be here tomorrow morning again. And we'll talk more about Jesus, less about tech. It'll be fun.
All right, let's thank Nathan Sutherland for a great presentation. Very valuable and informative. And so we're going to go ahead and dismiss. There are cookies and refreshments in the back. Go ahead and fellowship a little bit as you desire. And then he will be with us again in the morning at 9 and 10:30 a.m. So looking forward to that. Don't forget, he does have books for sale in the back. You can scan the QR code if you have cash. Just find somebody in leadership. Find